Update 5.11 has brought us a massive 8 new refines. We got 3 legendary refines, including 2 new legendary remix skills, so I've decided to split this batch into 2 separate videos. In part 1, we're going to be covering Kaze, Linus, Kliff, and Helbindi. In part 2, which should be up sometime soon, we're going to talk about Summertana, and then legendary Hector, legendary Tiki, and legendary Marth. I'll have links in the description, my pinned comment, as well as the end card when it's ready. We'll be covering the 8 refines in detail and discuss general playstyles and build ideas for each unit. This is a pretty good batch all around, so hopefully you got enough Divine Dew. Let's get started. First up is Kaze's Needle. This is a brand new weapon. It has 14 might plus accelerate specials. If Kaze initiates combat or is within 2 spaces of an ally, he gets +4 attack, speed, and res. Very simple effect, and as usual, Kaze has the -7 defense res dagger debuffs. Now, for the special refined upgrade, at start of combat, if Kaze has more than 25% HP, he gets another +4 attack, speed, and res. And during combat, if Kaze has more speed than the foe, he gets special charge +1 and deals +5 damage per his own attacks. This is included on AoE specials, which trigger before combat. Alrighty, so basically Kaze gets +8 attack, speed, and res, faster specials, and then Flashing Blade 4. This is a pretty good refine in general. Kaze gets some much needed damage, and more speed and res is right up his alley. With Flashing Blade 4, Kaze wants to outspeed the opponent, and not only does he get more special charge, but deals +5 damage on top of each hit. This is a great refine for proccing a ton of icebergs, and frees up Kaze's A slot or Sacred Seal slot for more stat boosting skills. He gets 0 extra defense, so Kaze is going all in on fighting mages or healers. If you do want to fight physical damage foes, you basically have to avoid as much contact as possible, and against dragons, he's going to need to be able to disable their adaptive damage. For the most part, Kaze's Needle is a pretty simple offensive weapon. Kaze can easily run a Desperation set since he's still going to want to avoid taking extra damage. He does have that 25% HP condition, so he cannot run Fury or dip too low. However, if you can stand the sweet spot of above 25% HP and under 75% HP, then Kaze can deal some good damage. You'll have a 2 cooldown Iceberg, and with Flashing Blade, that means Kaze needs 1 attack to charge it, and then the second hit will proc it. With Desperation, this combo works fine, and it's similar to Now's refine. You can run any attack and speed increasing skills like Swift Sparrow, attack and speed solo, or Brazen attack and speed, or even Blade Session. While Desperation is the easiest option to get, you can also use other B skills like No Follow Up. Obviously, if you cannot double, then Kaze probably doesn't proc his special. The issue is that if Kaze eats a distant counterattack, then he may just die. He would ideally be fighting mages to avoid taking too much damage himself. The same kind of goes for low speed and defense. It gets Kaze more damage output, but you lose the safety of Desperation. Now, if you want to run Glacies for bigger burst damage, then Kaze could run Special Spiral or just Times Pulse. Times Pulse is great since Kaze can just run the Desperation build and proc Glacies instead of Iceberg. If you want some extra stat boosters, then Kaze can run Speed and Res Oath from Dithorbo or the Speed and Res Solo Seal. We are also getting Attack and Speed Oath from Ninja Shamir. For actual res tanking builds, Kaze could run other skills like Mystic Boost or Close Ward. These would let him fight dragons, but he's really going to be specialized if you go down that route. It's an option, but I do think Kaze wants to be doubling as much as possible so he can abuse Flashing Blade 4. That means in general, I think offensive setups are better, but again, with such low defense, Kaze does need to be careful of all those distant counter tanks. Overall, this is a pretty okay refine and new weapon for Kaze if you want to build him. Our second new weapon is for Linus, and it's the Fanged Basilikos. But wait, doesn't Linus already have the regular Basilikos with a refine? Well, back then, Linus did debut with Raven's Basilikos, which already had a refine at the time. I don't believe any other Heroic Grail unit has done something like this since then, but now Linus is getting his own version of the Basilikos, and he's not going to be sharing with Raven. Now, Fanged Basilikos is a 16 might axe that accelerates specials, and if Linus has more than 25% HP, he gets +5 attack and speed. If you know the old Basilikos, it accelerates specials and had Life and Death 3. Essentially, Fanged Basilikos has these same effects in its base form, and Linus does not lose out on 5 defense and res. Kinda unfortunate for Raven. Now, when refined, at start of combat, if the foe has more than 75% HP, inflict penalty on foes speed and defense during combat equal to 5 plus current bonus on each of the foe's speed and defense stats times 2. I rewrote this a little bit, but it's the same as the endgame description. Basically, against healthy foes, Linus inflicts -5 speed and defense. If the foe has speed or defense field buffs, he takes that, times it by 2, and inflicts the total as in-combat debuffs on top. So this is similar to Legion's Snaring Axe, and it acts like a pseudo-panic effect. Linus will use speed and defense field buffs against the enemy. If they had +6 speed and defense, he inflicts -12 speed and defense, which cancels out the buffs to get -6 total. That then stacks with the -5 from before to get -11 speed and defense on the foe. Generally speaking, Fanged Basilikos can give Linus a +10 attack and speed advantage, and then turn the foe's debuffs against them. You don't want to neutralize the foe's speed and defense field buffs, otherwise the Refine is not going to activate at all. Numerically, Linus gets the advantage, but if you don't neutralize field buffs, that can let the enemy proc other abilities like bonus doubler. You do need to be careful in those cases. Now, like Kaze, Linus is going to want to be pretty offensive with Fanged Basilikos. Faster specials is great, and the general attack and speed boost with speed and defense in combat debuffs helps Linus get those doubles. He will challenge the foe's speed and defense field buffs by using them for himself, so Linus can compete with units trying to boost their speed in that way. If you want a modern unit to try and copy, Linus is similar to Charlotte. Obviously his base stats aren't as high as hers, but Linus can run something like times pulse with Glimmer to pre-charge it immediately. He can attack with Glimmer on the first hit, take a counterattack, and then proc another Glimmer. The defense debuffs makes him more effective, and no follow-up is a nice skill to ensure Linus doubles slower tanks. He does need to stay healthy, so Surge Spell is great if you can get it. The healing would help if you're spinning specials often. For some other skills, attack and speed solo with dodge B skills can work. Fanged Basilikos can help win those speed battles for dodge, and while Linus has okay defense, his res is definitely a weak point still. Desperation builds are fine, and you can throw in heavy or flashing blade as well. Frenzy can be the dodge version option if you want to focus on player phase. However, the HP conditions get pretty iffy. Linus may not be the best for these types of lower HP playstyles. If you are gonna run dodge, then attack smoke may help stay above 25% HP, and Wrath could ready a higher cooldown special as well. Again, a more risky playstyle. If you want an easy attack and speed buffing skill, then the attack and speed OC skill from Ninja Shamir is coming. Otherwise, Linus could be pretty nasty with a Menace C skill. I think both attack and defense and attack and speed Menace are great options. Attack and defense Menace can hammer in more defense debuffs for extra damage, and attack and speed Menace can help with dodge builds. For the most part, Linus still retains a sort of berserker identity with a focus on attack and speed. I suppose you could focus on defense or go for a Gale Force type setup, but if you can get some of these rarer skills like Surge Sparrow or Menace C skills, then Linus can use them pretty well. It's a pretty simple refine, and we have a new speedy infantry axe unit incoming, but for the most part, not too shabby. Third unit we have is Kliff, and he is refined for his Sagittae tome. Sagittae did undergo some changes to its base effect. It still grants +3 defense, but now at the start of combat, if the foe has more attack than Kliff, he gets +5 to all stats during combat and deals damage equal to 15% of the foe's attack, including when using AoE specials. So before, the enemy needed 5 more attack than Kliff, but now they just need to beat him by 1. As a reminder, Sagittae compares attack before combat starts, so this includes field buffs, debuffs, and other flat attack sources like merges. Kliff only has 30 base attack, so most modern units should beat him just fine, but this is one of the weird things about this weapon. You cannot go super heavy on field buffs or debuffs, otherwise Kliff may not activate Sagittae. Now, the lower attack will be okay because in addition to the general stat boost, Kliff now deals extra true damage on hit equal to 15% of the foe's attack stat. It's like Ruptured Sky on every hit, and for reference, an enemy with 60 attack will give Kliff 9 extra damage. Quite nice. Regarding the special refine, at the start of combat, if Kliff has 125% HP, he gets another +4 to all stats and inflicts guard on the enemy. Alrighty, so Sagittae is going in on making Kliff a tanky, annoying mage. He can potentially get +9 to all stats, extra damage per hit, and he has guard to duke it out with special reliant units. Kliff will definitely be an annoying unit to fight. He has some good base speed so he can double himself, and he's getting more damage now, not to mention he's stacking extra defense and res on top. Overall, pretty nice refine for this unique weapon. In terms of builds, Kliff already used Sagittae with Fortress Defense and Res 3, which gives him another +6 defense and res while lowering his attack further. You can even run the Fortress Defense and Res 2 seal if you wish, but it may not be necessary. With guard built into his weapon, Kliff can now disrupt attacker specials, and with no follow-up, he could mess up with slower units who are reliant on their follow-up attacks. Again, he has good base speed as well, so Kliff can double slower units himself, and against high attack tanks, Kliff's gonna get more damage thanks to his new on-hit effect. I think if you want to go further with this type of build, Defense and Res Menace would just be the nail in the coffin. Kliff can give himself another +6 Defense and Res and Field Buffs, and you're going to debuff the foe's res stat for more damage. It gives him some player phase power and protection, and you can use it as a debuff support for teammates as well. For Sacred Seals, you have so many options, including Defense and Res Spawned or Solo. Kliff can run Form Skills as well, or just spec for damage. If you prefer a more player phase build, then I think he can run those as well. He just needs to lose the attack check before combat, so any in-combat attack boosts are perfectly fine. Attack is played solo, so a Sparrow or low speed and res can be great since Kliff already has good defense and res to take a hit. You can get more protection from impact skills too, and this would also open up big bonfires or iceberg procs. If you want other defensive skills, then Kliff could easily be a fun close counter mage. He could also run Distant Defense 4 with his field buff neutralization effect, and you're going to combine that with his built-in guard. If you want a support skill, Kliff could run a Rally plus Ruse combo to be annoying. He doesn't need the guard effect, but it's nice for allies. Now, other skills to combine with guard can be Mystic Boost for healing sustain, Fatal Smoke to deny enemy healing, or you can run Pulse Smoke to mess with specials. Kliff can also just run his own special charging skills like Special Spiral, Flashing Blade, or Times Pulse. With a +9 stat boost and his stat spread, Kliff is open to a lot of build options. He's definitely an interesting unit to mess around with at high investment, and you can practically throw anything on him since Sagittae does a lot of work with its refine. Not sure how he's going to do at low merges, but dedicated fans should have a good time. Our last unit for this video is going to be Helbindi. Everyone's favorite side character from book 2 got a huge upgrade for his Byleistr axe. Maybe we'll get Ascended Helbindi one day. Now, this weapon used to only proc on odd turns, but it got an extra condition to work with. At start of combat, if Helbindi is within 4 spaces of a foe, or if it is an odd number turn, then grant +5 to all stats to Helbindi and allies within 2 spaces for 1 turn. Bonus is granted to Helbindi even if no allies are around. In addition, during odd turns, or if the foe has more than 75% HP at the start of combat, Helbindi gets +5 attack and inflicts -5 attack on the foe during combat. Wow, so Byleistr only used to grant +4 field buffs on odd turns. It was essentially a Spectrum odd wave buff. Now it can work on even turns too if Helbindi is within 4 spaces of an enemy. The buff got bumped up to +5, and it now works within 2 spaces like a tactics buff. Very good upgrade to the old base effect. That's not all though, because if it is an odd turn or if Helbindi fights a healthy foe, he gets more attack and inflicts attack debuffs. Already this is a very nice base effect for this weapon. For the refined portion, if Helbindi initiates combat or is within 2 spaces of an ally, grants +5 attack, inflict -5 attack on the foe, and the foe cannot make a follow-up attack. Dang, now this is a very solid new refine. Helbindi stacks his attack to +10, stacks his attack debuffs to -10, and prevents a follow-up attack as well. This is some solid stuff on top of the +5 field buffs that Helbindi gives himself and his teammates. While odd turns is where Helbindi is most consistent and easiest to use, he can attain all of these effects on even turns if you meet the secondary conditions. Helbindi is min-maxed around low speed, so fall prevention is amazing for him in general. While it can be bypassed somewhat easily and he has low speed, so he's probably gonna lose speed checks, Helbindi also adds a ton of bulk you need to get through while making his buffing capabilities easier to use. He may not be super oppressive, but the man is sure gonna take some hits. Even if you bait him first, Helbindi can have all of his effects active, so he does have player phase protection in some way. In terms of builds, I think low attack and defense is going to be real solid for Helbindi. You can stack up to -13 attack in debuffs and neutralize attack field buffs. The same goes for defense as well, since Helbindi adds +10 attack. Obviously, Quick Riposte is probably still needed for consistent 1-round KOs. However, you could just try the Dusu build of just being so insanely unkillable. Helbindi could run Brazen Stance 3 to get guard into his kit, but defense from his solo stacking with the seal is an option, and the man already gives himself +5 field buffs. In fact, Helbindi doesn't really synergize with some of these scarier skills like Menace, since he already gives himself full buffs, so half of Menace skills would just be wasted on him. That's fine though, since you have a lot of other options. For example, you could lean into Helbindi Byleistr's buffing support with other support skills. Helbindi already has Infantry Pulse in his base kit, and he has decent base HP to run Sudden Panic or Panic Ploy. Joint C skills can be great as well, like Joint Distant Guard or Joint Drive Attack. Now, there are a ton of other fun skills to consider. Distant Counter is pretty great, especially now that Helbindi can prevent a follow-up attack. With his self-buffing, he could run Bonus Doubler, but I do think there were other A skills that are better, like Unity A skills. He could also run Ideal 4 A skills since he buffs himself, but do be aware of Panic and Low effects. For Sacred Seals, you got tons of bonds or stance skills available, and we mentioned Defensive as solo. Helbindi could also be great with Form Seals too, but I think Steady Breath is going to be a fun option. It's just more special charge, and that can get Helbindi to an Aether faster, or maybe a big Ignis proc. DC plus Steady Breath would be pretty solid as well for 2 Crown specials. All in all, I do think Helbindi got a great refine. He may not be a pure raid boss, but he sure got a lot tankier, and his buffing niche got some nice quality of life changes. If you bring him on a team, he can supply buffs on odd turns, and maybe even turns as well if the enemy is close enough. Like Kliff, he is going to be a pretty sturdy unit, and if you don't get by his fall prevention, then Helbindi will stall things out longer. There are for sure easier to get slower axe infantry units with beefy stat lines like Baltus for example, but Helbindi did well for himself with this refine. Very fun to see. That will wrap up part 1 of the update 5.11 new refines. Let me know what you think about these units and feel free to share your own builds with everyone in the comments. I will be working on the second part of these refines after this. That video is going to include some Tana, Legendary Hector, Legendary Tiki, and Legendary Marth. We got some new Legendary Remix skills to discuss as well, so hopefully I'll see you there. Links are going to be in the description or in the end card once they're ready. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.